It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of TAXITV Live. Woohoo! This week, starring special guest star Ms. Ms. Robina-Ritchie Barker. I misspelled her name on my cue sheet here, but anyway, hi, Robina.
A lot.
Thank you for joining me on the show today.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have this conversation. As I said in the email that went out to everybody, some people are destined to be go-to people in the sync music industry. And I met Robina, I don't know, a week or 10 days ago or something. We were talking, she has some software and they're going to sponsor the Road Rally. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But in talking to her, I went, okay, this is a woman who is going to find success, is already seeing some, but is going to see a lot of it based on her personality, business acumen, and just having her act together, which really counts for a lot in this industry. A lot of people think, oh, my music is better than that person's, or my music is wonderful. And Robina and I talked about this the other day, that's the base requirement. If the music isn't good, you can't have the discussion. But you could have great music and fail in the industry if you don't have your business, I want to say a four-letter word. Yeah, there you go. Really? Some people actually watch the show with their kids, so I'll keep it clean. I should actually make sure that we're broadcasting. That's always smart to do. We are, okay. Anyway, so I got off of that and just went, wow, I love that lady. She's really got it together, and you do. So I want Robina to share some of this, some of her life history, and the things that she's figured out that might be applicable and very useful for those of you who are watching today. So let's start at the beginning, as they say.
Right. It's a good place to start.
It is. Where did you grow up, and how did you get into music?
Well, I was actually born right into a musical family. While I was in utero, I was at the Metropolitan Opera while my violinist mom was performing. So it really kind of came to me right from the beginning. But yeah, both of my parents were very high-level professional violinists. My father even went on to become one of the top 3 to 5 Baroque violinists in the world. So lots of music, always surrounded by musicians and all sorts of performer types. And so naturally, that was like the last thing I wanted to go into as a profession. Really big shoes, right? So I'm like, that's not for me. So
you found it intimidating, less so than inspiring?
I found it very intimidating, very intimidating. And I mean, being the child of musician parents, of course, I'm, being put off to have my my piano lessons, my requisite piano lessons, and I really, really didn't like that much. Mom just had to really push me to just practice at all. The last thing I wanted to do was practice. Finally, she just gave up the fight and said, "Fine, you can quit." And that's when I started playing about 2 to 3 hours a day down
because you wanted to.
Because I wanted to. It was no longer about having to, reach any kind of standard. I was playing for me. I was, trying to figure out Elton John songs, Supertramp songs. I was, even then I was dabbling in writing music, really, really, really awful songs. But it was a passion. It was absolutely a passion. But, once I left home and I didn't have my piano anymore, it's like, okay, it's not music, but it's got to be something creative. So off to Los Angeles I went, and I struck out to be an actor. And I spent 11 years in LA doing just that, television commercials, plays, all sorts of things. And then I had what I guess you call it a big break, but it's not really a big break because it's not like it took me really anywhere other than just the annals of coolness. I became an authentic Disney princess. I was the live action reference for Princess Jasmine in Aladdin.
Explain what that is. Those of us who live in LA kind of know by osmosis.
Yeah, exactly. I think probably more people know what it is now than back then, because you're seeing a lot of it with the gaming and everything. You got people with their ping pong balls walls all over them. You've got Andy Serkis's Gollum, I think really kind of brought that all to the forefront. People understand what that is. But back then it was not nearly so technical. Literally, they just had a big cardboard background with masking tape grid. I am not kidding you. And we would get the tapes of what the voiceover actors had done, and we would act out the entire movie. Everything that you saw on screen, we did. Even had just like a fake magic carpet kind of thing, and the cameras going all around us. So it was an amazing experience. You know, we're working with the animators every day, and so it really, you got it was just so much creativity, so much brilliance, so much business. It was an extraordinary experience.
So the voice actors do their thing.
This is
completely off subject, but it's fascinating, and I'm sure that our crowd will love it. Actually, can you bring your mic input level up a tad? Some people are saying you're a little low.
Sure. Let me see. Hang on a second.
Are you on a Mac or a PC?
I am on a Mac.
Okay. So, do you know how to do it, or do you need
going over to system settings?
Right. Sound.
Sound. Come on. There you go.
Yeah, they just changed the interface. Right. And then choose your mic. And...
All right. Up we go. How's that?
Keep going. Keep going.
How about that?
A little hot now. Should be like
hot. Okay.
7.
How about there?
I always set mine around 7/8, but.
Yeah, they're not giving me any numbers here. It's just dashes. How does that say? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's good, I think. Okay. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so
sure, no problem.
Okay, so I used to work on Thundercats, the animated series, and it was one of the few times where they would actually record the actors doing the script and then cut picture to that, which normally
that's exactly what they do.
Yeah. So you were moving to what another actor said.
It was lip syncing. So, I mean, they would send us a script, and they'd send us like cassettes because, hey, that dates me. But so we would listen to what the voiceover actors had done. And, you know, I'd literally have the sides, I'd have the script, and I practice what, you know, Linda Larkin, the voiceover actress for Jasmine, was doing, trying to get her inflections and try to bring those into my body language, so that when we went into shoot, they would just have us act out to the sounds and try so it matches what was happening. And then the animators, so brilliant, they literally would draw what they saw, and their skill is incredible. It was just a great experience. It really was.
I can't imagine how it must be a sense of pride and a sense of frustration when you see the finished product at Grauman's Chinese Theater, and you want to stand up and go, "Those are my moves."
It's funny because some people go, "Oh my gosh, I really see you in there." You know, Scott is always like, "Yeah, that makes me crazy. All I can see is you." But a couple of years ago, they had like when Moana came out, I think it was, they had this big thing at the El Capitan Theater with, you know, they brought in the directors, and they brought to show Aladdin again, and they brought me and the guy who played Aladdin, and we all were out on stage. And so finally, it was like finally being able to get, you know, some recognition for what we'd done, and it was a huge thing, huge moment. So
wow,
yeah, it was a little moment of fame. So, you know, you grab it, right?
Pretty cool. And good for Scott, because he gets to make out with a Disney princess.
Yeah, I never had that 4-inch waist though. That was completely.
I don't think any living human beings ever had a 4-inch waist.
I hope not.
Well, they might be hospitalized if they did.
Yeah, not so much. But anyway, and how that ties into my music is that literally the first check I got for Aladdin is, okay, well, what do you do when you get your first good-sized check from being an actor? But the first thing I went is I just went and I bought myself a Roland JV1000 keyboard. It was the only thing that I really wanted. So
were you still playing every day at this point?
I couldn't. I didn't even have a piano.
You had nothing. Wow.
No,
okay.
So it had been years since I'd sat down to the piano. And so I finally had this toy, and it was great. But of course, at this point, it really is just a toy, because back then, you know, you didn't have DAWs, you didn't have any of the possibilities that you have today as far as being able to create amazing things. So it really was just for my my headphones. It was just for my ears, and but it was fun. And I just went on with life, and I moved into various stages of business. I moved back to New York, and actually, first I was in Orlando for a bit, working for Nickelodeon Studios behind the scenes. Then I was in New York for a while, really just trying to start my acting career up again. But in the meanwhile, my entrepreneurial bent kind of kicked in, and I started owning my own company. So I did dog collars. It was my first company, and I learned so much because, I totally failed at that. Totally failed, and nothing teaches you more than failure. That's for sure.
You're talking dog collars for actual dogs, not the kind you'd see in those shops on Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah, dogs. Real
Okay,
dogs.
so what made you think of doing dog collars? Do you have like 6 dogs that needed collars at home? I mean, that's an odd profession.
It's just because I'd gotten a puppy, and as soon as you get a puppy, you just want to do all sorts of things for them, and so that kind of it was a thing. It was a thing. Anyway, it didn't go anywhere, and finally, but it certainly started me down that path of wanting to run my own business, do my own thing. So ultimately, sticking with the dog theme, I ran a dog daycare. I know this is so far away from music, but we're getting there. We're getting there. So I did a dog daycare, and I owned for almost 10 years, where
Wow.
I took a dog daycare that was doing about 20 dogs a day, and I learned systems. I learned how to listen to what the customer wanted. I learned how to manage things both from a marketing but also from business system standpoint, so that I could maximize the staffing and so on and so forth. And took it from 20 dogs a day to over 100 dogs a day, with boarding, with grooming, with training, with a retail shop,
Wow.
the whole shebang. So I really learned well. I really learned just how critical putting in the right systems was, and most importantly, listening to what the client wanted and giving them what they wanted. That caused our explosive growth. So
You're blowing my mind, and this is why I got excited, you guys, when I was speaking with Robina the other day. It's like, oh, you get it, because as I've said to you guys on TAXITV at least 100 times, if not 1,000, it's not just about the music. Having the good music, it doesn't have to be amazing. It's not about being the world's greatest composer. It's about composing the right material for the right scene. But beyond that is a business thing. And when I was speaking with Robina the other day, I went, oh, you totally get it. And for being a creative person, let's face it, most actors, actresses, and musicians do not have a strong business side, but you do. You're kind of a freak in a good way about that. Well, that's why, because I literally can't think of 10 that I've met in my 50-year career that have had the business.
I didn't realize I was that rare.
Yeah, you are that rare, and you're able to articulate it. So that's why I wanted to come on the show and share this, because most musicians go back to the early days of the record business, the 60s, 70s, where, if you had 3 songs that sounded like hits, you get a record deal, and then a manager would take care of all this stuff for you.
That's right, but not anymore. Not anymore.
Right.
I mean, now you got to do all this stuff. You got to do all the work, but it's actually so much better now than it was back then, because you were dealing with gatekeepers back then. So sure, you'd have somebody do all this minutia, but they were gatekeepers, and you had to pass muster there. It was the same thing with me with acting. Is I had gatekeepers. I had agents, and then you had casting directors, and then directors and all sorts of gatekeepers before you could actually get cast. And Aladdin did not come from any gatekeepers. Aladdin came from a play that I did, that came from a connection with a teacher that I had from my acting school, networking. So it was really all about the people. So when they say it's who you know, I mean, certainly for me, that played out in a big way. And I kind of wish I had had more of that element back then. I wish I was smarter back then.
Once again, I'm so happy to have you on the show, because the road rally's coming up November 7th through the 10th.
That's
and I keep telling that's right. You've been to 2 of them or something already?
Yeah, twice. And I'll be there. Yeah. Well, of course I'll be there this time.
But it's people don't understand the power of the networking that takes place at the rally because a lot of people are shy.
Everything.
I get it. I'm pretty introverted when I'm not on a webcam or standing on stage at the road rally. But in my normal everyday life, I am introverted. And the road rally, even for people who are extreme introverts, it's such a welcoming and supportive environment that.
It's amazing.
Am I exaggerating to say you can
But
dramatically blow your career up just by walking in that building?
it worked for me, and it certainly worked for, a collaborator of mine. She has made so many, connections, and she's doing all sorts of stuff. Me, I've been focusing a lot on TrackStage, so that's kind of slowed my growth. But I got my first library signing from last year's road rally. So
Oh,
yeah, no, it's the real deal. It's amazing.
and how did that signing, don't say who it is, but how did that happen?
Okay.
Did you like spill a drink on somebody in the bar?
Oh gosh, that would have been elegant, wouldn't it? No, I got actually, and here, luck obviously does play a part in everything that we do in the creative industry as well, every industry. But I one of my pieces was played at the panel.
That's right.
And so that was it was probably about the most terrifying 15 seconds, 30 seconds that I.
Now that you're saying this, but Robina, I'm getting to know you through our last, conversation and today. You do not seem like somebody who would get sweaty palms over having their art.
I was shaking.
Really?
I was shaking. Well, because
You're an actress, like a real life
now,
actress.
actor's not a problem. I mean, sure, you get nervous, but you got a script, you know how to do the thing. But music, you're just kind of putting your baby out there, and it's like, so yeah, that's very nervous. But it was so good because I have spent so much time, in my headphones, and when I sold my dog daycare, I was like, okay, well, now what am I going to do? And I was like, well, come on, let's play with that music thing. Let's, like, we bought ourselves, a little bit of free time. Let's really dive in and see what we can do with this. And so I learned my QBase, and I started, learning how to mix and how to master. And boy, I got a long way to go with that, but I'm still learning. But it was a tremendous, it was so empowering. Oh my gosh. It was like,
Walk us through
suddenly,
how you learned, because
oh gosh.
I did a panel about 5 years ago at the rally. I get frustrated. I've got 4 daughters and a wife. So I live in a very feminine
A lot of
world.
girls.
Yeah, and I want them to be empowered, and they chart the course of their own life, of course, and they shouldn't have to depend on any other person, be it male, female, whatever. But
Knowledge.
but
Knowledge is the power. Yeah.
but I look at our industry. There's so fewer females doing this than men.
So disappointing.
And so, how did you
Yeah.
inspire some other ladies that are watching this episode or will watch the archive later? Look, there are plenty of women video editors, graphic designers. This is no different. Learning a DAW is no different than that. But
No,
somebody once said to me, it's because studios always have dudes hanging out making records, and that's kind of where we grew up. How did you cross that Rubicon and learn how to engineer and produce your own stuff?
I didn't care. I really didn't care. Yeah, okay, it's a male-dominated world. Well, so quite frankly, was Hollywood, so is entrepreneurship, so is so much. It really didn't make any difference to me yet. Now, maybe that is something I would find later on as I progressed in the career. I might come up against that. But quite frankly, I have found nothing but support. And with the online classes that I took, with the coaches and the mentors that I've been working with to learn how to use my stuff, it was, I mean, originally I was only just doing piano work, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that was where I focused, and of course it had a classical bent to it because parents, but it was really, but it was really kind of moody music, instrumental stuff. And I never in a million years thought that I would ever be able to find a home for it. I really, honestly, I was not going to be a rock star. I wasn't going to be heard on the radio. I really just thought, It's just for that.
Did you kind of
And
know in the back of your mind that music licensing existed because of
I
your acting
didn't.
career?
I
You didn't.
didn't.
Wow.
I
Okay.
had no clue. I mean, I knew that there were composers who wrote scores, but I
Right.
didn't know that individual musicians could have individual songs on the. Oh, what? I mean, when I found out about sync licensing, I mean, my little head exploded. I thought, oh my gosh, and even bigger, the thing that really got me as a 50-something-year-old woman when I started this was like, okay, well, first of all, I'm a woman. Actually, that didn't really occur to me, but a 50-year-old woman sure did. And I am not cool. No, not cool. And I don't really want to.
Then you definitely belong on this show.
I didn't want to, I didn't want to go out and do the concert or the gigging thing, and I was really too unconfident to be even playing with other people. But suddenly it was like, wait a minute, you mean they take any genre, like anything? It's like if I just write good moody music that fits what they're looking for, I could actually make money doing this. Are you kidding me? So yeah, my head exploded, and I thought, okay, I really, really, really want to do this. So
Wow.
because I'm an entrepreneur, I was going to approach this as being a business right from the get-go. And I realized that, okay, sync licensing, not really the music industry. It is the film industry. And I know the film industry. And the film industry is big business. I mean, sure, we can say it's creative. It is. But music is very, very an incredibly creative venture when you're sitting there and you're composing, and I get that absolute high, that you get when you're just in that zone. That is pure magic. That is just that there's nothing that compares with it, quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned. So it's extraordinarily creative. But then you've got to shift gears because the film industry is big business. It is deadline driven. It is all about budgets. It's all about time, and it's careers are made and broken over stupid mistakes. And you really have to know what you're doing. You have to show up as a professional to be able to meet the needs of the people who are doing these high pressure projects. So
You are such a breath of fresh air to me because I couldn't wait to have you on the show for this reason. I didn't tell you to say this. I didn't know you were going to say it like that, but everything you just said is so important. Yet so many people, I would say 90% or greater of all musicians still think that sync music licensing, is like the record industry where it's like, oh, that's such an awesome song. I have to put it in my movie. And
I
there's
know.
so much more.
And really, I feel for musicians because honestly, you don't know what you don't know, right? And
Right.
sometimes what you don't know is really a problem. It's like you don't know you got a problem until suddenly it's a really big problem, and
Yep.
now you've really pooched things. So, and when I say pooch things, I'm not meaning you go out and just give up. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying you go, oh, newbie mistake, yikes, okay, things you
Right.
don't want to do. And I really did not want to come across as a newbie because I knew how they were written off from my days in Hollywood. And so I wanted to know that I was going to show up as a professional. So I started to research just what that looked like. And so,
How did you
yeah.
research? A question I didn't get to ask a couple
Yeah.
minutes ago is you mentioned that you did tutorials or something to learn how to run QBase.
Yeah.
It was that mostly how you learned was by watching tutorials, and how many hours a day were you working at it, and how
Oh,
long
wow.
did it take you until you
Oh, it
thought,
took a long
okay,
time. Yeah.
I'm pretty competent, because we're all still learning. No matter how long you've been
Oh,
doing it, you're
really?
always getting better. But
Well, you hope so, yeah.
how long did it take you until you got to the point where you went, that's good enough, that it sounds professional?
I would say it took me. I would say probably took me 2 to 3 years, and I wasn't doing 8 hours a day at that point, right? So it would have been more part-time, 4 or 5 hours a day, maybe 3, maybe more on weekends, because it was my passion, right? So I was really diving in. And I mean, I I've got very high standards, and I think if I'd actually jumped into actual courses where I was working with somebody, I was just doing online tutorials. So I had to do a lot of listening and comparing, being my music to what I was hearing out there, and just going, such a gap, such a gap. And how do I make that gap smaller and smaller and smaller? And in a lot of ways, I don't think I'm there yet. There's still so far for me to go to where I go, okay, now I can be absolutely confident that this is going to sound amazing against anybody's, just sonically. I have much more confidence in my ability to compose and have music and a mood and to impact people that way than I do the actual technicals. So I still am learning. I am still working, and that's never going to end. So.
Right.
So a lot of trial and error, and it's still going that way. But
how did you learn stuff like the length of an average cue, what a buttoned ending is, what a
taxi road rally? I'm not actually kidding. Yeah, the whole button ending and all of these no fade outs and these sorts of things.
The developmental arc, all that stuff was from us.
That absolutely was. I mean, I had learned a lot about the sync courses that I'd taken were actually more about the relationship building and and learning the technical stuff you need to do, the homework that you have to have in place. So a lot of understanding even what a cue was. The first time I went to the road rally I wasn't even sure what a cue was. I don't know, I might be submitting to something and maybe this isn't a cue, but that's what was so great. All of these classes there, I was just, I was blown away. It was great to come back the second time and go to the classes that I couldn't go the first time.
Right.
So it really is. Yeah, it really has helped. So but there's so many ways you can learn. There's so much opportunity. I mean, this is nuts. Never before has there been this kind of opportunity out there, both to learn from so many different people of incredible skills, and to have the ability to get work in so many different opportunities, whether you've got film, television, ads, you've got gaming, you've got corporate presentations, you've got, of course, all of the influencers and the streaming. I mean, it's just, there's so many opportunities now to get, music out there. And but yeah, there's a lot of work that goes along with that. So I was like, okay, I've got to metadata. There's all this information that I have to have about my track before I can even consider sending it anywhere. Oh my gosh, I have to come up with artwork. I have to have PRO registrations. What's an ISWC? What's an ISRC? I had to come up with different keywords. Oh, rights. What the heck were all the rights about? Who's my co-writers and who owns the master? What is a master recording? And how does that work out? Who gets what royalties? How do I record this? So it was a lot of learning from these classes, and I also was doing some research with the Music Supervisors Guild, the kind of stuff that they look for in metadata. So I knew I had all this stuff, and I had I had alternate versions of my songs, I had stems, I had
how long had you been making music for sync when you started to realize all this stuff that you're espousing right now about all the versions and ISRCs and just the whole thing? We'll get into. I do want to talk about your company and the software.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty mind blowing, but I want people to understand the importance of having to know about this stuff, and then we'll get into how to deal with it, because so many people just think that's like the old days where it's just about my music is awesome. Somebody's going to recognize my genius and everything's just going to take off because I'm that good.
You could be Mozart and not get a gig if you don't have metadata. It's as simple as that. If you don't have metadata on your track, you really don't have a track. It is arguably as important as the music when it comes to the film industry, because without it, I know. Now, this is coming from somebody who really does, I look at my music as something that's very sacred when I'm creating it.
Yeah.
But not once I finished it. Once I finished it, as far as I'm concerned, it's a product. It's a product that's going to fit a need. And so I have to find the right need for that product. It's not about, just saying, hey, buy me, because maybe... Why would we use Mozart in a hip hop movie? We're not. So, it's not about me. It's about what does the client want. So
you're a freak in the best possible way that you get all this stuff. I mean, no, the fact that you inherently figured this out on your own, mind blowing.
Well, it just comes from all of the experience and the failures of my, my own business, my career in Hollywood, all of these things. I just really kind of understanding that ultimately, if you want to succeed as an entrepreneur, you've got to serve somebody's need, period. And nowadays, now that we don't have these labels or these managers to take care of all this stuff, it's incumbent on us to seek out those opportunities and make sure we're filling that need with our products. Now, a lot of people get really upset, calling music a product. It's just taking away what's so special about it. And I'm like, all right, so, and this won't work for everybody, but I as far as I'm concerned, music is only sacred twice. Once when you're in the creation mode, and then when the listener hears it and is impacted by it. Everything in between is just a product. It's just a product that's going to fit a need or it's not going to fit a need. And so your job is to help the people who have the needs. Pure and simple.
I'm getting rid of the taxi and making you my new mascot. You are so right on the money. Somebody once told me, I forget which animal, it's not a wolf, but there's some animal that gives birth to its young and like literally shoves them out of the nest right then and there. But if 3 years later they meet on the plains of the Serengeti, they recognize mommy and baby, and there's still a bond there. So you just explain that in musical terms, that that you're connected at the moment of creation, and when somebody who hears it feels a deeper emotion in a scene because of music that you created. But see, that's a constant in your career, because being able to physically move your body in a way that interprets the emotions of what an animated character is going to do is not dissimilar, right?
I guess that's true, yeah.
Yeah, you still have to make the person connect emotionally.
Absolutely. I mean, isn't that why we write music? I mean, ultimately, at least everybody I've ever known who writes music, you write music to impact people. And so it's our form of connecting with others, with strangers, and, to leave an impression on them and to give them a moment that elevates whatever's going on in their life or rescues them from whatever they're going on in their life. And when it comes to sync, it's really about supporting a story. You're part of a team that is telling a story. So how can your music tell that story? Telling that story may not be your best song. Telling that story may be a song that you don't particularly like, but it may suit that scene perfectly. And if you recognize that it's about what that brief says, what that client needs, and you're able to both match those needs and have all your ducks in a row, you're going to start being taken seriously. So that's kind of what I operate on.
So it's great attitude, because a lot of people see a brief and go, I don't want to create something that's within the constraints or confines of what they're asking or telling me to do. I just want to emote and everybody will get it because I'm that good. Whereas I've asked some of our most successful members, do you feel constrained, by deadlines, by briefs, by all this stuff? And they say, no, it's actually inspiring, because left to my own devices, I'll just sit there and endlessly tinker and never finish a damn thing.
One thing that I heard early on in my journey as I was trying to, learn how to write music and compose music was one of the things that they tell you to do is limit yourself. Literally say, okay, I'm only going to use these notes. So if you go into, okay, I'm going to do something and I'm only going to use these 6 notes and no other ones. And you're constrained will give you great, creativity. Or if you say, I'm only going to use these instruments, it's like an artist doing a painting on a 4x4 or a 10x10, or that, they're making it small, and it actually, those constraints actually help, because otherwise you can just go all over the place.
I've recently fallen in love with an artist, an abstract artist who's now deceased, but pretty famous on a global basis, named Mark Rothko. And he did...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, see, people know about
Yeah.
Mark.
Oh, absolutely.
I went out and bought $200 worth of paints and canvases and every book I could get on the Rothko technique. I've never
Oh,
painted
wow.
I've actually painted one painting before, like 40 years ago in my life. But his paintings are called color fields. It's just like a green rectangle on a blue rectangle. And you look
Yeah.
at it and it actually makes your heart and your mind feel an emotion. And
Isn't that
that's what kept,
crazy?
yeah. And I thought, if you can do that with like 5 colors and a couple of rectangles on a piece of canvas, I got to understand this guy. So
No
I get
kidding, right?
exactly what you're talking about. And he was as constrained as you get. You're doing nothing but rectangles with a few colors. And yet
Right.
it touches you right here.
It really does. It really does. And I think it just elevates us, quite frankly. If you're really trying to hit a chord, no pun intended, but if you're really trying to, make that connection, that's the important thing. It's not all the instruments you're using. It's not all the different voices you're using. It's not even all of the complexity or,
Right.
if you're hitting the emotion, if that's where you're aiming, that's your target. That's what you want to go for. That's the most important thing.
Have you found on your compositional journey have you discovered that simplicity conveys emotion better than complexity? Or are you?
Yeah, I'm really bad at that. Really, really, really bad at that. No, yeah, I am famous for overcomplicating things. It's actually my superpower. but yeah,
are you at a point now where you're realizing you have to pare it
oh,
down?
of course I do. I absolutely recognize it. And it's quite frankly, I mean, I had to take a break because we were jumping into TrackStage, and that's really been my focus for the last couple of years, much more than my music. But it's funny because as I've taken the break, I just a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to kind of my stuff and going, all right, well, we're going to start playing it. I'm going, wow, that is entirely too long. That is entirely too much. And wow, I could scale that back significantly and it would be more impactful. That whole less is more. I think that's my life lesson that I'm trying to learn. I'm going to keep working on that.
What is your primary genre again? What did
Well,
you
my I would say it's piano solo. Now, with that being said, I have, been experimenting with symphonic, which was both really intimidating because parents, but also really exciting because I had, to have a defined palette of a symphony. Again, hey, a symphony's enormous, but in a sense, it's kind of limiting. It's not like I'm going to be auditioning all different kinds of pads or, different electronic sounds. So being constrained to a certain instrument group it has been very, very exciting. And I got a lot of learning still to do in that because that mixing an orchestra, I got learning to do. But I would say that my more primary genres kind of moved into the kind of neoclassical folk area, with some kind of my favorite composer out there right now is Rob Simonson. And so he has this marriage of really nice mood of pads and different strings. And then with the piano, just kind of brought in a lot more simple than the stuff that I tend to write, but incredibly impactful. So I kind of listen to his stuff as much as I can and try to emulate how he sorts of translates things.
Kind of like a Rothko painting.
Like a Rothko painting, exactly.
Let's see. I'm trying to see. I actually haven't even looked at my notes yet today, and I think we've hit so much of the stuff. Go back to the business side of things. Okay, so the dog collar thing didn't work out.
Yeah, dog collar thing didn't work out.
But what if you could name 2 or 3 business lessons that you learned? I mean, you already mentioned listen to the customer and give them what they're asking for. It doesn't get any more simple than that. Any other business stuff that you can think of that would apply?
Systems, absolutely a system. And I think really you have to have systems when things are complicated. And unfortunately, the reality is that a lot of the business details in sync are complicated. So this is kind of what I was experiencing when I first came out. I knew I wanted to focus on this like a business, because I knew that was the way through. But I had to come up with things for the rights. I had to come up with things with metadata. I needed a metadata tagger. I needed to register my splits. I needed to have split sheets, and I had to have the contracts, and I had to come up with keywords, and then oh my gosh, I had to tag this metadata, and I'm like, okay, all right, systems, got to do systems. And so I started off with spreadsheets. Okay, now I'm a business person. I do spreadsheets. Okay, I'm really, really strong in spreadsheets, but spreadsheets are they're like the antithesis of creativity. So I really, I hate doing the kind of scrolling through columns and rolling the rows and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, is this it? Can't I do better than this? And so I tried a bunch of different tools, and there were tools out there. Okay, this is good at that, and this one's good at that. And I like this one. Maybe this will. It doesn't do that. Okay, so it was one of those situations where I found, piecemeal, more or less what I could do. But boy, it's a lot of copying and pasting, a lot of logging in. It's a lot of duplicated efforts and a lot of wasted time. Just all of these things everywhere. And so I'm like, okay, I got to try and build this into something that's a little bit more, come together. I've got to, I'm using Trello for my music development, and I'm using SurveyMonkey to get vetting surveys done, and I'm using Excel spreadsheets, and I'm using song splits. Anyway, the list goes on. I was using probably anywhere between 8 and 12 different tools to try and cover.
Did you have stuff, were you exporting and importing stuff from one software to another? Or did you have all these different screens open for?
When that would work, but it usually doesn't work. A lot of these online things, they're not taking exporting or importing. So a lot of it really was just copying and pasting and copying and pasting, copying and pasting. And certainly that in and of itself was kind of frustrating. I had finally landed on a software called Pipedrive, which is a customer relationship management software. So it's really built for sales. It's like a sales,
right. Just to give everybody a brief overview, CRM's customer relationship software is basically it's a Rolodex that takes notes and a calendar so that you can go, okay, I talked to this person, gave them the basic pitch on September 1st, and you said, I'm going to go back in 90 days and give them the next level, blah, blah, blah. So you're using that for music. I'm using it
because, in a way, the paradigm works, right? Because I am selling a product, and I am going to be finding clients. And so it kind of fit. And I was using different parts of it to try to track my music and development. And I had the product list was all of my songs, and
How many songs do you have, by the way?
I think right now I've got about 86. Yeah, 86 I think is what's in my.
Okay, so it's still a pretty.
That's just the primary tracks. That's not including all the alternates.
Right.
If I've got all the alternates.
But that's a pretty small catalog. It's not like you had 5,000 songs in all the alt
I'm still
mixes.
at the starting line. I am still at the starting line.
Wow, and you recognized that early on that you needed a better way to manage this data.
Oh, because it was taking so much time, right? And so, even then, I was having to copy all, because it's not built for sync. Pipedrive was really kind of clunky to use. Because I'm trying to put a round peg in a square hole, and right. it kind of worked. At least I wasn't doing a million different places, but there's still a lot of copying and pasting when I needed to, do pitches or put things up on websites. And then, then probably the best thing happened. I showed up to my admin day because I needed almost an entire day as I was getting my catalog going for each week to keep up to get all of my stuff organized.
I think that's a deal breaker that stops a lot of musicians from moving forward with sync.
Yeah. I don't blame them. I really don't. It can suck the joy out of it. It really can. And so I showed up to Pipedrive to take care of this, and they'd done an update. And I could no longer copy and buy keywords anymore.
No, the dreaded update.
The only way that I could copy my keywords was to export it to a spreadsheet. So I'm back in
So you had to export it to a spreadsheet and then import it?
I honestly, I did. Yeah, I melted down for sure. Because it was like, I want to do this because I love writing music. I love being creative. And I didn't sign up for this. I don't want it to be like this. And Scott, my brilliant software developer husband, who's been doing web apps and software development for gazillion years and a half. Not trying to date you, honey, but he said, well, he'd been looking for a project. So I'm like, can we do this? Because this is making me crazy. I'm losing my mind.
How did the marriage survive? You with a list of wants, needs, and demands for the software, and him trying to code it to make you happy. That must have been a tough couple of months. Or many
years,
months.
dude.
Yeah.
Years.
Sorry. As soon as that left my lips, I knew I was underestimating.
It's honestly, it can be a battle of wills. Guys, I actually, with my many checkered past, I actually do have a background also in web design and app, user interface design. So I kind of like doing the front end and being the client, what the client needs, and Scott's being the architect with all of the realities that a database driven app requires. And so very often we kind of go, but it's been really good. We've definitely come up with something we're proud of.
And still sleeping in the same bedroom, I hope.
Yes, we spend 24/7. Quite frankly, I marvel at it, just how well we get along. I mean, I'm very lucky, very, very lucky.
My wife joined me in 2017 working at Taxi once the kids were like, not out of the nest, but school full time, and she had time on her hands, didn't go back to her old career. And I remember that first year of her being in the office, I thought, boy, what a way to kill a marriage. And now we get along great. But yeah, we were together 24/7 because we'd be at home working or at the office working together. And it carried over into our personal life. Couldn't have dinner without, before it was just me talking about Taxi and her going, God, I wish he would just shut up. And then it became her needling me at dinner. Well, why did you do it that way and not this way? So I give you guys a lot of credit for surviving that.
One thing that's good is it becomes the only thing you argue about, right?
That's true. I've always contended that having this business acumen makes you more likable to a client, which is what you said 40 minutes ago, probably.
Yeah.
So I'm putting myself in the shoes for the sake of this conversation. I'm the music library owner, and now I love working with you because your music is good enough, right enough. Your attitude is great. You have a service attitude, and you're organized. And a couple minutes from now, we'll explain what TrackStage is, but you're able to get back to them in a hurry with a definitive answer or the right product in a hurry, which, as you stated earlier, that's Hollywood. It moves like this. It's a very fast moving Ferris wheel, and you either get on or fall off, I guess.
You get on, you fall off, or sometimes you kind of sit in limbo for a while, which, that's the other thing, and that's part of this whole journey as well, is you can do everything right, and then you still don't get the job. You could match the brief very close to it. You could actually get the job technically. The music supervisor could choose the song. They could take it to the director. The director could go, hey, that's fantastic. We're going to go with that. And then they decide to make it a car chase instead of a romantic scene. And so you never know how close your music actually came, but it's sitting there and you now have hit the radar of that music supervisor. And who knows when that's going to bear fruit.
Man, I just had a conversation on Friday night or Saturday night with a friend of mine who's a music supervisor. We had this exact same conversation because we're planning something for the Rodale, and he said, it's not unusual that I take something and I go, almost works, but doesn't quite. I'm going to stick that in the rainy day folder on my desktop.
Yeah.
And 4 years later, he'll go back to it and end up using it. So it does happen that way. Okay. I'm looking for a cough drop. I actually had COVID last week. Mildest case ever, by the way. Literally, I had the chills for like an hour.
Wow, that's lucky.
No
I mean, it's
fever.
unlucky, but lucky, unlucky.
No fever, no headache, none of the typical
Oh,
symptoms, but I
wow.
tested positive and I could tell, but it was like a really mild cold. Anyway, I still have a little lingering tickle in my throat. And for those of you who watched last week's episode, remember when I went and had a little coughing fit? That was the first sign. Yeah.
COVID.
Anyway, okay, so let's talk about TrackStage. Let's get a little more in depth. So you pressured your hubby. Thank you, Liz. Liz just brought me a Ricola. Sorry, guys, you're going to hear me talking with a cough drop in my mouth. But
Everybody
so,
together, Ricola.
right. Oh, man, now we have to pay somebody.
Oh, do it.
Actually, ASCAP or BMI will pay somebody. Anyway, so if you had to say TrackStage solves this problem, is there a way to give it an overarching, here's the big problem it solves?
It puts everything that a sync musician needs, all in a single place. So, literally, whether you are trying to do your metadata, whether you're trying to record your writes, whether you're pitching, if you're trying to track your development, everything is right there. And so there is no more copying and pasting and copying and pasting. Everything is really linked together. And it just protects you from making, newbie mistakes, because you can see the stuff that you have to have in place, and you can use all sorts of time-saving tools that will really kind of do a lot of the work for you. And then you got your tagged audio files ready to go. So it really just takes, we counted about 14 different tools, brings it into one. So it is a fantastic tool for musicians of all levels to really organize.
Well, that was my next question.
Yeah.
Like, again, I hate to keep calling you freakish, but you are. You're clearly.
I'll wear that as a badge of honor.
You should. You're really, really smart. I can see kind of how your brain works. The fact that you've got this analytical brain and this production brain and probably a math brain in there and all that stuff. Well, at least a numbers brain. Spreadsheets. Can't do spreadsheet. Well, yeah, I guess you could. But anyway, my point being, a lot of musicians aren't Robina, and they may not be wired like you're wired. Is TrackStage overly complex and difficult for a beginner?
So we have the first full transparency. TrackStage is a professional level program. It's basically like a DAW for the business side of a sync musician's career. So it is deep. It's got everything that a pro level very prolific sync musician needs to be able to record everything, their licenses, their pitches, the relationships that they've been developing, along with their catalogs. But for people who are just starting out, we've got different levels, and we've got we call it TrackStage Lite, which is just the catalog. So, to be honest with you, I think it's a fantastic way for a newbie to start off with, because first of all, it's all on your hard drive, right? So you're not having to upload it to somewhere and then download and do all of that time stuff. It's all right there, but it shows you what you need to have. It shows you the important stuff that you need to make sure is tagged, and then you can just tag right from within your catalog. So you don't have to go, copy paste into a metadata tagger and deal with all of that. So I think it actually is really helpful for somebody who's just getting started, just to build their catalog without all the other bells and whistles. And then you can upgrade as you get, you built out your catalog, and now, maybe I want to start pitching. So you can upgrade to TrackStage Sync, and everything just stays in place. And now you've got those extra modules. And then when you've got that in place, you can upgrade to TrackStage Pro, which has got the dashboard and the creative development modules. So it definitely tiers to whatever works for you.
So basically, you could learn about these things that are business necessities, because if you don't have good metadata, it makes it very hard to use your music, because nobody wants to use music where they don't know who to pay. It's that simple.
There are billions of dollars of royalties sitting out there that are unpaid because people didn't put any metadata, or didn't put the right metadata on in their music. I mean, spelling counts. You get this. If you don't have your co-writer's information as it appears in their PRO, it's not going to get to them. It's like crazy stuff that you have to be really on top of. So, and this is not the musician brain. You really do have to segregate yourself and go, okay, this is going to be my admin brain and this is my musician brain.
But it sounds like it kind of pushes you through the steps of learning what's important, because you could sit down and read books. I was not a good student, and I could read a history book and go, wow, George Washington, fascinating guy. I will not remember when he fought in a certain battle or what his mother's name was, all those details. I get the overarching concept that he was a big thinker and he was courageous and he was a great leader, but that's about as far as it goes. So musicians know, to create an analogy here, musicians know that they need to have a business, they need to have some business acumen, but learning it, to read about it, is boring. This sounds like it forces you to do it in a good way, and you learn by doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, the work has to be done, regardless of whether you're using TrackStage or spreadsheets or whatnot. This is just stuff that has to be done. It's not something that we're making up, but we've just made it easier to do all of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you can use just the different fields that are in the TrackStage catalog, lets you know the important fields you got to have in metadata. And then it tells you when you haven't tagged that metadata yet. So then you know you have to tag your metadata. So all of these things just take the newbie stuff right out of the picture. So it's very empowering for that. And to tell you, it saves a ton of time. I did some time trials, and I think it was doing like 25 tracks all at once. And I cut it in less than a third, compared to spreadsheets and different tools having to use. And like I said, I'm fast with spreadsheets, but yeah, wow. It's a real time saver. Yeah.
So we've got a question in the chat room. Alan Hall wants to know what system requirements for TrackStage. The website didn't specify that.
Yeah. Okay. So you need to have it's desktop. Obviously this is not something you'd be able to do on your phone. So it's either Mac OS or it is, and I think we support from Catalina forward. From Catalina forward, and then, sorry, I'm just talking to the husband who knows all of this stuff, and then Windows 10 or 11 or above. So,
there was a follow-on to that. Alan Hall says, looks easy to set. So people are already going to your website and checking it out. That's cool. Nice. Oh, Ted Yoder had a question, but he deleted it. I thought it was a good question, Ted, whatever it was. Oh, well. Let's see. We've got about a half hour, slightly more than a half hour left. Do you guys want to ask some questions, do a little live Q&A? Because, Ted's back with his question. Not to put anyone on the spot, I'm already in the disco ecosystem. Yeah. How does this differ? That's a great question.
It is a great question. We get that one a lot. So the disco ecosystem was built originally for music supervisors. So it really is a tool for them to organize their music. And it made sense for disco to open that up to artists so that the artists could then kind of connect with the music supervisors that were on disco. All of that's great, but the focus is the music supervisor, less on the artist. So it doesn't have, because believe me, I wanted disco so badly to work for me. It was one of the go-tos that I was working with, but it just fell short in all of the stuff that I needed to have, and it wasn't great at tracking the relationship building portion. And it wasn't really a place where I could record any kind of placements. And, the rights were great, but then I also needed, contracts. So I was having to use multiple tools. And so now what we suggest is for people who by all means, we actually work really nicely with disco. So if you start in the TrackStage world, you can tag all of your tracks on your hard drive, and this is important, I'll tell you why in a second, but tagging your tracks on your hard drive and then putting them up to disco. When you do that, it takes all the metadata that is on those tracks. It goes with disco, so you don't have to enter it up there, so it's already in place. So what also this does is that now you're ready up in disco for any disco opportunities that happen up there, but you've also got these tagged files on your hard drive that are ready to go, that you can pitch to non-disco people, that you can upload to to libraries or to sync agents and publishers that aren't in disco. Disco represents, I guess, what, 40 or 50% of music supervisors out there. So that's a big chunk of supervisors that aren't on disco that still want to get streaming links that aren't SoundCloud and so on and so forth. And we also, uploading to Taxi for Taxi briefs. We even got a cool little Taxi widget as well.
I was so grateful and impressed that you did that. Thank you. I just to let you guys know, I didn't know TrackStage was being developed. I didn't ask Robina or Scott to do this. They did it on their own, so thank you. I really, really appreciate that. Let's see, is there another question in here? No, not yet. Disco. Oh, is Disco still the preferred or go-to platform for sharing music at the road rally? Honestly, I didn't. I know Disco, and we've had the CEO or co-founder of Disco at the road rally on panels before. Great guy. I didn't know there was a preferred way of sharing music, but I will say, I think I brought this up at last week's episode. QR code. Look, nobody's walking around with CDs anymore because nobody uses a CD player anymore, but you do need a way to represent your music. So just sometimes what happens by default is the thing that should be paid attention to because it happened organically. QR codes became a thing at last year's Road Rally more than ever before. So I'd say a normal sized business card. Don't make some big oversized thing somebody can't stick in a pocket. Although you could make an argument, the bigger it is, the more it stands out from other stuff. But people want to stick it in their jeans pocket or their wallet or whatever. They get home, their wallet's fat. They pull out all those business cards they got at the road rally. Oh, here's Robina. There's a QR code. I'm going to zap the QR code. Now, where that takes you, whether it's TrackStage, you could use TrackStage, I'm guessing, in that capacity.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. We have a streaming server. So, I mean, when you are tagging your tracks, when you tag an MP3, it automatically creates a streaming link that you can share. And you can either pitch it through TrackStage or you can pitch it to Disco or you can pitch it anywhere, but it is streaming with a download link as well.
And Ted Yoder's following up his question. I love follow-ups, by the way, guys. Can I easily migrate my catalog from Disco to TrackStage?
Yes. Okay. So now you can absolutely, TrackStage is kind of really simple because all you have to do is just drag your tracks into a folder on your desktop, and then TrackStage talks to that folder. So you're not uploading anything or downloading, none of that. So you would need to download your tracks from Disco, and then you can just drag it in to this folder, and all the metadata that comes down from Disco will come with it. So now I am aware, at least I was, that with Disco, this is getting a little technical, but metadata fields are known as ID3 fields. So these are the different fields that embed into audio files, and a couple of their fields don't actually line up with the regular ID3 fields. So we read, it is a little weird. But then again, they're building for their own ecosystem, and I'm not knocking them for that because it works for what they're doing up there. But when you download, you want to make sure that things are looking right. The important stuff looks right, but there are some that kind of go, oh, wait a minute, that's not quite right.
It's funny how certain conventions, whether it's nomenclature or topography on a recording console, some things are best served in a universal manner. Like I call it a prindle, a shifter. Back when we still change gears on our car with park, reverse, neutral, drive, and low. Prindle, and all cars had it, so anybody could get in and move the prindle.
And I know how to do it. Yeah, you do the prindle.
and now, we just got a car, I don't know, a couple of years ago that it's push button in the center console, and it's just got drive, neutral, and something. Doesn't even.
Yeah, exactly. Reverse.
Yeah, right. Yeah, thank you. Exactly. It doesn't have a low gear in it, and to get to low gear, you hit the D a second time. But that's like way too much work for me. It was hard for me to figure out. I just saw a couple of good questions go by. So, somebody asked, "Where'd it go? Do you run?" Oh, here we go. TrackStage, MP3, Wave, and AIFs, all
three.
work.
All
Okay.
three, and actually here, I'm just going to share a little surprise thing that may surprise some of you. There is a myth out there that waves don't hold metadata. They do. They're not necessarily a good file to use, though, because the reason why people think that waves don't hold metadata is that Apple Music, iTunes, does not work with waves. So it's not going to read that metadata. It's certainly not going to save that metadata. So if you go into Apple Music and you tag your wave file, it's going to look lovely on your computer, but you can't send it anywhere. It's just going to disappear. So that's why AIFs and MP3s are the preferred way. MP3s are the best for pitching because they're small file size. AIFs, full sound, and also the full complement of the MP3 fields. So yeah, there are a few other gotchas with Apple Music, but yeah, that's one of the ones to be aware of. But you got to also, while I'm saying that, you got to remember that even if you are tagging those WAV files, you don't know who is going to be what the people you're going to be sending this to are going to be using. So you have to assume that people are going to be using Apple Music. You have to, shoot for the lowest common denominator. So still, I would stay away from waves, even though they do hold metadata.
I'm a picky audio guy, and it's rare that I hear something go, ooh, and find out that it's an MP3. MP3s sound pretty darn good, especially the higher res MP3s. And a lot of people ask me this question. Okay, so Taxi uses MP3s. Well, that's for the ease of forwarding it to the industry. Yeah. It's compact, blah, blah, blah. If a library signs you, they'll generally ask you for waves. Or at least a super high res MP3 because they don't want their product, which your product becomes their product. They don't want it to sound like junk. So.
Yeah. And also WAV files. One of the things that's with WAV files is that WAV files hold time code. So for film editors, they can match up that time code. So that's why waves are very, very valuable. So you still want to have WAV versions of your tracks. They're just not the ones you pitch with.
Here's a great question from Marion Laird, a regular in the chat room, who wants to know, are there any specific business or entrepreneurial skills that you'd recommend for us to learn to switch on our business brain?
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. Nothing more than putting yourself in the client's shoes. Honestly, that's going to determine your business brain right then and there. The more you can kind of ideate what that looks like, or at least understand what your customer wants, the more you're going to start organizing yourself to be able to reach that person. So you're sitting there, you're going, okay, this music supervisor is under deadline. They got major stresses as well. They may have a lot of egos around them, but they're under pressure. They're under time pressure. They need to get the right song, and they need to do a good job. So they're really they're not interested in your best song if it doesn't fit what they're using. So you want to think that way. Okay, this is my best song.
That's mind-blowing information for musicians, right?
Yeah. You got to. What is going to make their life really happy and easy right now? What's going to make it easy is you're going to give them the song that it fits the project they're working on. If there's a brief, it fits that brief as close to exact as possible. You want to make sure it gets to them fast. You want to make sure it's very easy for them to open. You want to make sure it's got all of the metadata on it. And when I say the metadata that they've got to have, obviously they need to have the title. They need to have the artist name. They have to know who wrote the songs. So all the collaborators, they need to know what the percentages are for each of the people who wrote those things. They have to have that up front. They need to know who owns the master. They need to know who has the right to negotiate the contract. So all of that information has to be in your metadata, period. Like, that's not a negotiable.
Oh, it doesn't matter that much because they love my song because it's so awesome. They'll just figure it out.
Yeah. No, okay. It's certainly not the environment to be trying to learn. They are not there to teach you. They are not there to give you feedback on your song. Never ask. I mean, can you imagine like being really under pressure? You got to find the right song, and you're going through all your emails, and you're listening to these things. And somebody's going, hey, could you tell me, how did you like my song? Or why didn't you choose my song? Wasn't it, because I thought it was really good. good. Can you tell me how I might be able to improve this? Now, these are all really, really, really valid questions.
The next time I go on vacation, can you come to LA and cover me while I'm gone? You totally get all this stuff. Oh, yeah. They are not in the business of making you happy or holding your hand. They're in the business of finding a solution to the problem they have, which is which music makes this scene better. And it's not they're trying to keep you out or hold you to a standard that's impossibly high. It's just they need to solve a problem. I've told the shoe store story 1,000 times on this YouTube channel about, if a lady comes in and needs a beige pump to work with her bridesmaid's dress with a 3.5-inch heel and a 7.5B shoe size, ladies 7.5B, and the shoe salesman comes out with a man's Baswegian penny loafer. It's both great shoes, but one fits, the other one doesn't fit the need.
And you're gonna the guy who brings out the shoe is you're not gonna trust him to be able to be able to take care of you. So you're certainly not gonna be asking him for the next pair of shoes. So if you're fitting what they're asking for, you're already, whether they choose your song or not, you're already building a reputation. You haven't wasted their time, and that's valuable. Another thing as far as business is concerned, and I'm probably going to get a little bit of flack about this, but we all love our music. Our music isn't precious. One of the most valuable lessons I ever learned. Now they're precious, but the most valuable lesson I learned is I was not God's gift to composing. And I had to learn that. I did when I first came out. I thought, oh my gosh, listen to what I made. It's fantastic. No, it really, really isn't. And that honestly was the best thing ever. It was so freeing because
how did you learn that, and how hard was it to flick that switch? I think for some, because I had hit a certain age, that's like I couldn't have done this in my 20s, but I had for the first time I was out there putting my songs into the world for vetting, and then I started listening to them next to other people's songs and the critiques or the whatnots that were coming in, and they say, oh well, your song's great like this, but this isn't so great now. And it was really, I thought it was amazing, and because I was naive, and I went, okay, and I went, wow, does that ever take a lot of pressure off? Now it's all about just learning and creating and fitting this into slots. And so as soon as I let go of being precious, I started composing so much faster, so much better. My music got better because I wasn't under this pressure of everything had to be perfect. It has to hit the mood. That's the important thing. It has to hit the target. Man, we should do, it's almost too late this year for this year's rally because I'm almost locking down everything right now, but as far as the panels and class, but that would make a really good class or panel, is letting go of precious.
Oh yeah, right. No kidding.
We've done 27 previous road rallies. I've never done one on letting go of precious.
And it's hard because people want it to be precious because you are so, I'll speak to myself, so enamored with the process, because the act of composing, it can be otherworldly, and then when you produce something, it does feel like magic. But to release it and then just let it have its own life is a thing of beauty, and it just is so freeing. It really is. I think it was Elizabeth Gilbert. I was reading Big Magic. If you've never read Big Magic, it's a great book for artists. They talked about genius. Yeah. That I don't know whether it was the Greeks or but that the genius was never considered to be an attribute of somebody. It wasn't something that you called somebody. It's like you were visited by genius. So like genius came to you for a moment and it went. And then that was, so you couldn't, so that freed you from, it's a whole muse thing. If you're using,
yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like the muse is, the muse might be the feminine genius and the genius is the male genius or something, Precisely. But they're clearly related.
Precisely. So if you give the muse all the power and you say, okay, muse, you got all of the accolades and you have all of the critiques. It's on you. Thanks for visiting, off you go. And then on to the next one. And to me, the very act of letting go of that song made space for me to create the next one and the next one and the next one. And it also makes it a lot easier to say, yeah, this is not the song for this project or for this opportunity, because it doesn't fit what they're asking for.
I'm going to meet with Angel, who she and I have to talk. She's our CFO, but she lays out the classes. So I take the people I've got on panels, and then we look at who would be good for classes, who would be good for mentor lunches and stuff. If we have an extra class slot, would you be up for teaching a class at the rally called Letting Go of Precious?
I would love it.
Okay.
Sure.
I think it's so important. And as you're talking, at first I thought, well, that's a 10-minute conversation. No, that could be a 60-minute class pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, because it's hard. Wow. It's hard work.
All right, let me go back to.
You love it.
Let me go back to. I mean, seriously, it sounds so freeing.
It is.
I'm going to see if anybody else. Do you have any sessions or videos to learn how to use TrackStage to its fullest capacity?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we've got something called TrackStage University. So whenever anybody subscribes, you have unlimited access to these live webinars. I hold them every week, and they kind of go in sequence. So every month we're just teaching everything from just the very basics all the way through how to use your catalog and develop your own workflow, then how to use the whole pitching and targeting opportunities and licenses modules, and then also how to manage your creative development through TrackStage. So each week we do something different, but we also are very, very hands-on with our clients. This is one of those things. It's kind of like, yes, we're fairly new kid on the block, but that's really kind of an advantage for people because we're very accessible. So you're not getting bots. You're not getting somebody who's been outsourced. You're getting us. And so we're going to make sure that we are working you through whatever challenge you have to make sure that you're getting this working for you. And I tell you, for the Taxi Road Rally, and so if you're watching this right now, we have a limited time kind of offer for you guys that you're going to definitely want to check out because it's going to make your life so much easier.
and you guys are going to have a booth at the rally so people can stop by and ask questions. Yeah. Somebody just had a question. Oh, it's a Road Rally question. I'll make this one quick because I want to get back to TrackStage. Road Rally question. I'm thinking about grabbing an MP3 player to share music to save phone battery. Should I grab one with Bluetooth or a wired jack? Wired jack. Nobody wants to start connecting to Bluetooth at the Road Rally. Plug it in and make sure, practice, plug it in, hit play, and it plays. I'm wrestling with that right now. We're going to do a particular listening panel in the ballroom at the rally. And we were thinking about doing something I've been a part of in the past at the Hawaii Songwriters thing, which is people come up with their phone or their MP3 player, whatever device they've got, maybe a tablet, and they jack into the PA system. It's shocking how many people walk up there and go, oh, and they spend a minute and a half getting this all straightened out. Whereas before we would just have everything on a playlist and use a random number generator. Okay, we're going to listen to song 13, which is Robina's song, I Love Taxi, bing, and we're done. Versus, it got to be embarrassing sometimes, the Hawaii thing, because people would just fumfer around for so long, and other people are sitting out in the audience getting ticked off because I want a shot too. So it's not fair that you get to spend a minute and a half trying to find your song you weren't prepared. So we're working it out, but thank you for asking that question. When it comes to metadata, this is from Jesse McGrath. Is there a controlled taxonomy for music genres? Boy, I want to see what your answer is. I may chime in on this one.
Yeah. So the answer is yes and no. There are, as far as the official ID3 is, they do have, a certain number of genres. That being said, you can put any genre in there that you would like. Genres are changing constantly, evolving, growing. So, you don't want to have an outdated genre there. But the thing is, you don't want a genre load. So really, you should only have the one genre that really speaks the most to your song. And I know that can be hard if you've got a crossover. So you might be able to do one with maybe a subgenre, but keep it really, really slim.
Yes. The best advice, because you know what, you exactly said what I was thinking, which is why I giggled when the question was asked. Everything changes. And, like what the hell really is like indie folk pop? How much folk is that? How much pop is that? How much indie is that? Where's the balance? They don't all fit neatly into a category, whereas like Led Zeppelin was rock and the Carpenters were pop. That was pretty easy. So it's incumbent on you, the creator, to spend some time going on Spotify, and whatever you think your genre is, go to that genre playlist and go, does my stuff sound like it would fit on this list? It either will or it won't. It'll be pretty obvious.
And also get the opinions of other people. It's very easy for us to live in our own ecosphere. We see our song through our lens, and a lot of that lens is the experience that we had while we were creating it. That could be very, very different for the person who's listening to it. So sending out surveys or questionnaires, asking people to say, okay, what moods does this evoke for you? This is a great way to be able to come up with keywords. Get it from other people. They tell you what are the moods, what genre do you think this is, what TV show do you think that this would fit best in? Those kinds of questions are really, really valuable because it takes you hear it from the outside. You find out what your customer thinks of your product.
I think that Steve Barden's book, I'm looking to see if I don't have a copy here, and I don't want to jump out of my chair right now in the middle of a broadcast, but Steve Barden's book on creating music for film and TV, or TV specifically, probably has the best list of genres and emotions in book form that I've seen. And I know every time I've used it as a reference for stuff that I've done on TAXITV. So I think everybody should have that book. It's just that simple. Dean Crapane's books also really good for that.
Fantastic. Stuff. And another thing, TrackStage actually has a built-in library of keywords that you can actually select from or add to, so you can build your own library of it, so you don't have to go, keyword searching all the time.
That's interesting. There's somebody from Fox River Taxi. I grew up in Ottawa, Illinois, which was at the intersection of the Fox and Illinois rivers. I'm wondering if you're from my hometown.
Another Ottawa.
Yeah, another Ottawa.
I'm used to Canada, Ottawa.
When I was 13 years old, I met Randy Bachman for the first time, and I said, I'm from Ottawa, and he lit up, and I said, Ottawa, Illinois, 12 miles that way. He was not impressed. All right, another question here. Let's see. Do I need to go up or down? What is this rally and what is it for? Can you guys in the chat room fill Charlie in? I don't want to take any time.
It's something you got to be at, I'll tell you that. I'm not getting paid for that, but you really have to be there.
Thank you. It's Taxi's annual conference. People say it's the best conference for independent musicians. It has an 80% lean towards film and TV music, but we do some record label stuff and regular publishing stuff there. But if you want to learn how to create music for music licensing, how to network, and the kind of stuff we're talking about today, the Taxi Road Rally, and you can only come if you're a Taxi member or the guest of a member. The good news is it's free. It doesn't cost $500 like other conferences. So you could join Taxi, get the Road Rally for free.
The one thing you're going to hear over and over again out there outside of the Taxi ecosphere when they're talking about Taxi membership, they say the Road Rally is worth the value of the membership. Easy.
Yeah.
You're ready. If you buy a subscription or you join Taxi for a year, and boom, that Road Rally has more than paid for itself.
But a lot of people think that they need to have a giant catalog of music to come to the Road Rally, because they think, oh, I'm going to come and I'm just going to shove my music in I almost ripped my earphone out. I'm going to shove my music in somebody's face, and they're going to recognize my genius and send over the magic carpet, the private jet, and the briefcase full of $100 bills. Doesn't work like that. You're better off coming your first year to learn how the industry works, because you'll make a bunch of music, you won't finish it, and you won't come because it's not finished. Whereas if you come with nothing other than I want to learn and I want to network, you will go home with collaborators, with some industry contacts, and a pretty clear picture of what kind of music the industry really needs, which is a really handy thing to have before you start creating. Don't wait for the muse.
Yeah, it's true.
Lock the muse in a cage and make her go to work for you. Now people are just saying nice stuff about the Road Rally in there. Thank you, guys. Any tips how to connect with the mood and emotion in composing? Oh, this is a great question from Katrina Seifert. Any tips? This is a great question, Katrina. I'm so impressed with this. Any tips how to connect with the mood and emotion in composing from your acting background?
I was just going to say, that is a great question, and that is so true. Um, it it's not so much meditation. To be honest with you, when I sit down to compose, I let my fingers start to do the thing. And then it triggers in me, what does that emotion sound like? What does that emotion feel like? And then I go deeper into that. As far as acting is concerned, certainly I can bring, you can either recall your own history or you can imagine a story. Either of these can work. Sometimes imagining your own history can get in the way and can take things into it, because we have our workings in our brain and it can go all over the place and maybe not be as appropriate for sync. But if you're working specifically for sync, I would suggest watching a show that has music that's very similar to yours. What are the moods that are happening there? What is the story that's happening there? And really kind of dive into the imagination of what the characters are feeling, what they're experiencing. What is it like to be, a Viking who just chopped the head off of their ex-lover? Well, I don't know.
Faster and cheaper than a divorce.
Right. But I mean, really dive into imagining. I mean, ultimately, that's what acting is right? It's just imagining the circumstances, imagining what is happening, and then draw from that. Our imaginations really lead us to really cool places. And it also helps if, like I said, if you've got to focus on the target that you're aiming for.
I have been disappointed, to be honest, in the past. We've done TAXITV episodes where I've played stuff and asked people, what's the emotion? And they blurt out stuff in the chat room like, sounds like riding a bicycle. Well, that's not an emotion. What is the emotion that you feel when maybe you feel joy, or maybe you feel a sense of freedom, but not so. It's almost like there needs to be a class on how to define emotion, a structured approach to looking at emotion, because once you can kind of compartmentalize emotions, then you can feed those emotions musically a little more clearly, I would think. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, no, actually, you got me thinking. But I mean, like riding a bicycle. It can be you're riding a bicycle through a beautiful, serene countryside, and the summer breeze and that's going to evoke a certain emotion. Or you could be riding a bicycle and you got a pack of dogs chasing you. So I mean, both of those are riding a bicycle, and they're both very different emotions. So really, what is happening, and then how does that inform your music?
I just want to know, are those dogs that are chasing that second person that you mentioned wearing your dog collars from back in the day? They made it into a movie.
So. No. Yeah, that would be funny.
Katrina says, sounds like great TAXITV, writing from emotion. I've interviewed a couple of my friends who score films, and we talk about writing from emotion. And there are rules to the game, but they're pretty easy to figure out. Like, you're not going to use minor sevenths to convey a positive, uplifting emotion. You're just not.
Unless you're Danny Elfman.
Right, that's true. I just saw, what was it? Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I didn't love it. And I loved the first one. And I didn't go in with a bad attitude like people often do, or sometimes do, with a sequel, like, oh, it can't be as good. I went in hoping for big stuff, but Danny Elfman was the best thing about Beetlejuice.
He's always the best thing. Oh, talk about another favorite of mine.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's to go from his original career to becoming Danny Elfman composer.
I know. I know. What a great, it's a great story.
Let's see. We've got 2 minutes left, just about. Her class could be a two-parter, losing your precious and cue emotion. I find when you try and put 10 pounds of stuff into a 5-pound bag, you rip the bag. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Thanks for the suggestion, but let's stick to one class, one topic, because that way you get exactly the right people to show up
right.
for it.
Exactly. You get the right clients.
Yep. Somebody just asked, where'd it go? I don't know. I lost it. Sorry, guys. Anyway, we've only got about a minute and a half here. Robina, this has just been mind-blowing. I already knew it was going to be good when I first talked to you. I didn't know it was going to be this good. You are a force to be reckoned with, and I know that you're still pretty new at this.
Yeah.
But you're so inspiring because you find the best possible way to make people understand that the business taking care of those little details is oftentimes, if not entirely, the difference between success and failure. You could have a B-plus song and B-plus songs all day long and be successful because your titles were good, your metadata was good, your attitude was good, your response time when somebody reaches out to you is good. I can't tell you, the other day I was trying to reach out to a taxi member. They had given us an old phone number in the database. They'd given us an old email in the database from like 12 years ago, never updated it. And if somebody's reaching out to you to put your song in a major motion picture and they try to reach out, they're going to come to Taxi. We're going to try and reach out and we're not going to get you. And all this stuff really matters as much as the music. And like
it really does.
A B-plus piece of music can get into an A-plus movie with the right metadata.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with diving into just your creations in your zone, but you definitely have to segment if you're going to be aiming for sync. You need to, it need to be authentic, but you need to hit the mark.
I think I've gotten pretty much everything on my list, but there was one question I didn't ask you, which is where I'm scanning to see if I can find it. During our previous conversation, you said a lot of people don't realize they have a problem in it until it's too late. Did that mean that they didn't use their metadata or they didn't get it right or something like that, and they lost the gig because of that? That's when they realized they've got the problem?
It happens every day. It literally happens every day. I mean, so many people I talk to on the other side, the receiving end of tracks, they are beside themselves because there's not even contact information, or it's just a blank, there's no metadata at all. These things just end up in never land. You're not going to get any work, period, if you don't at least have a means of being contacted consistently, like you said. So you don't know you don't know that you don't have a problem. You think, hey, I've got a great song, and you go out there and you put your great song out there, but you don't realize that you haven't done your due diligence, and it bites you in the butt, and it's a real when that happens, because it could have been the best song ever. I mean, they could go, oh my God, this could be the next themes, song to this fantastic hot new series, but you didn't get it because they don't know how to get a hold of you. Yeah. So or worse, you get your splits wrong, which can cause all sorts of different.
I know how to get a hold of you, and I will talk to you after I speak with Angela about finding a slot for you to do that extra class. I think she's already got a slot held for you to do a demo on track. Yeah, that's right.
We're doing a class on metadata. Yeah.
Awesome. Robina-Ritchie Barker, you are a gem. You really are. Your energy, your knowledge, just your enthusiasm for what you do is infectious, and I hope a lot of people catch whatever you've got.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. I just want to just put it out there because we're offering a special for TAXITV people. So if you go, we got a URL to make this easy. So if you go to TrackStageTaxi.com, it'll take you right to that. We decided just to make that easier instead of slashes and all of that. So
TrackStageTaxi.com. Okay. That's great.
Yeah, limited time offer, but it can be really worth your while.
All right. And are you going to offer a discount at the Road Rally? I guess you have to now because I asked
what we're offering Yeah, no, we're offering a real special that just, it encompasses all sorts of extras, including for people who already have like established metadata and spreadsheets and stuff. We're going to make your life so easy.
Awesome. That's it for me. Oh, don't miss next week. I'm going to have Ronan Chris Murphy, one of your very favorite people at the Road Rally and TAXITV, engineer producer, who is just adored by everybody. Robina, tell Scott I said hi. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Hey, thanks for having me here. This has been so much fun.
Your knowledge and enthusiasm are more contagious than COVID.
Wow, I'm going to get that put on a T-shirt.
And don't
more
get
contagious than COVID.
Don't get vaccinated, anybody. All right. See you guys next week. Thanks again, Robina. Bye-bye.
Bye.